All right, welcome to another episode of the list. As always, Jordan, Xavier Worthy's number one fan, is with me. Jordan, how you doing today?
All right. Well, since we have a special guest, I need to explain myself. Alf, first of all, thank you for joining us. Second of all, I'm not Xavier Worthy's number one fan. Brett and our producer in the back, Mr. S, tricked me into saying that I was Xavier Worthy's number one fan yesterday.
Yeah, and as Jordan said, of the 3 yards per carry podcast, Alf Arteaga. Alf, thank you for joining us. Like earlier, very appreciative of this.
Well, thank you for having me, and I don't think it's such a bad thing to be an Xavier Worthy fan, by the way.
Well, I did say after they tricked me, they had me rank my top five choices for pick 21. They didn't tell me who was coming after, and I had to lock guys into slots. So they had me pick 2 through 5. And then number 1, which was the only slot I had left, they put Xavier Worthy in. So I said from right now until draft day, I'm going to preface it with saying it's all a bit, but I'm going to go all out. And if we draft Xavier Worthy, I will have proof on video that I called it beforehand, said he was my number one target. And if he works out, I was a fan of his since Pee Wee football.
It's certainly a possibility. I don't know if you guys listen to our draft series, but we do this draft series where we go over by every single position unit, and we did quarterbacks, we did running backs, quarterbacks and running backs. It took us like 50 minutes to get through. Last night we did offensive linemen and tight ends, and it took us an hour and 10 minutes. We had to do one episode on the wide receivers, and we went an hour and 30 minutes on the wide receivers. Pretty much once you get past the top 3, man, you could like so much in this wide receiver class. And we've given this a lot of thought. And I think it's all 3 of us on the podcast, and we all agree this is the best wide receiver class we've had in a long time. And you don't have to take one at 21. You get one at 55. I think you're probably going to get what is a first-round talent any other season.
Yeah, I think that you can look at it one of two ways. I'm a huge fan of the guard class that could be available at 55. Guys like Christian Haynes, guys like Cooper Beebe, guys like Mason McCormick that can make a lot of sense there. Christian Mahogany is another one. I know Brett, being a Michigan guy, loves Zach Zinter. I think that you get one of those guys at 55, and if you have an opportunity to get Brian Thomas at 21, the whole preparation to this draft, I've been no to a wide receiver in the first round. But the more I look at the way kind of the draft board falls, you can make a heavy case to give Brian Thomas to the Dolphins at 21.
I agree. There's some problems with Brian Thomas. He's not necessarily as clean as the other players. I like Xavier Legette better. My issues are when you dig deeper into the advanced numbers. Brian Thomas had an issue with separation, and they just don't stack up favorably against everybody else in this class. That's just me. But is he a fine prospect? Absolutely.
So if you could have your dream right now, 21 and 55, what does that look like?
Well, look, I'm not opposed to completely reaching if that's a player that, if there's a player that you just absolutely must have. I think at 21, I think Xavier Legette is probably reaching. But at 55, I think he's probably underdrafted because I think he'll go before 55. So if you could pencil me in for Xavier Legette at 55, I would be ecstatic. And at 21, maybe Johnny Newton. I'm not so hot on Robinson, but and I understand because this has been a bone of contention on our podcast. You want a guy that's going to play a lot of snaps. If they get a Latu, will he play a lot of snaps year one? Probably not.
Yeah,
a guy that would play and would be pretty versatile. I think Charles, Darius Robinson, I think would be a guy that would play a lot early on. So at 21, I'm really undecided. I would probably just punt on the pick and trade down and get more picks because I love this class. I think it's a really, really good class.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say too, for one, since 2021, we finally have a first round pick, which is awesome. But between some very savvy moves into the offseason with replacing some big names and just what the draft is deep in, this is probably the most unpredictable Dolphins draft I remember, because we are not stuck in going one way. And I think we're in a good situation, like absolutely, where I want to trade down to get more picks.
No, I completely agree. This is such a good draft that you almost got to be in that top 100 more than what you already are. You have 2 top 100 picks. You ideally want 3, and you probably want 4, because there's a few positions that I think are pretty top heavy. I think guard is top heavy because I think there'll be a run on them in the second round. If you have 2 third round picks, let's say, or if you had a third round pick for this year, you could probably punt on a guard in the second round, and you're still going to get a good player in the third. So there's a lot of, you could gain yourself a lot of versatility by just making a move out of 21. And if you listen to Chris Greer's comments today, man, it really does feel as if that's in the front of his mind. Like he's really thinking about that.
Yeah. And I was going to say, not that he had to do that. Well, I can't believe he had to do this, but he confirmed that we're not looking at a quarterback in the first round today, which
and I can appreciate the people that that bring up the question, although I don't know, there's something to be said for asking a question and the answer to. It's it's like if you want to hear your question said and you want like you want confirmation on something you're going to write, but it's been argued like, oh, other teams have done it. No other team has done it. The teams that have done it, it's because their quarterbacks are older. Yeah, Alex Smith was an okay quarterback. They took Patrick Mahomes when Alex Smith was 33 years old. They took Lamar Jackson in Baltimore when Joe Flacco was 33 and probably done. It just doesn't happen. The best answer for the best comparable was when the Chargers essentially wanted to get basically just get rid of Drew Brees in favor of a new first round pick in Phillip Rivers. That's the only comparable, really, and that really didn't work out for them all too well. One guy's in the Hall of Fame, the other one we're not so sure about. But nobody's gonna get rid of their 26-year-old franchise quarterback in favor of a first round pick. Like that's a fireable offense for a general manager, in my opinion. It's a waste of a first round pick.
Yeah, and I do love Michael Penix, but the reason everybody says go get him is they use Tua's injury history, and I'm like, I'm a Michigan fan, I'm a Big Ten fan. I saw Penix in Indiana, was always great, but he had, before going to Washington, had 3 season-ending injuries in college, so he's not the beacon of health either.
No, absolutely not.
And
his were soft tissue and knee. So I don't know. Like his injury history is pretty strong. And if we're really talking prospects, and I saw a guy today, and I think he was just trolling. He was like, Tua would be like the 3rd or 4th best prospect in this class, and I think I correctly pointed out, no, he would be the best prospect in this class. Like there's ways to grade this. When Tua was an injury away from being a higher rated prospect than Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love, how the hell are you going to compare him to guys like Drake May that most people don't know if he's going to be a bust or not? The only surefire pick in this entire draft is probably Caleb Williams, and you don't know what he's going to be. He has his warts as well. So, even if we're comparing just prospect to prospect, no, Tua clears this group.
Yeah, and I am a Caleb Williams fan. I don't think he's Mahomes or what people think he is. I think he's a very good quarterback. Brett is a huge Caleb Williams doubter. So we're a podcast that won't blink at the thought process that Tua would be the number 1 quarterback in this class. The one thing I keep going back to, and we talked about scenarios at 21 and 55, if the Dolphins go, let's say, a guy like Johnny Newton at 21, and then a guy like Xavier Legette or Roman Wilson or Jalen Polk or one of those guys at 55, Do you think that the team right now is comfortable with the in-house options to fill all 5 spots on the offensive line?
I don't. I think that they probably have a guard on the back burner. I hypothesized that it was that one of them was probably Lake and Tomlinson. I still believe that. Okay, I still believe that they put a call into Lake and Tomlinson. Lake and Tomlinson was like, you know what? I'm not waiting around. I got a starting job. Now here's the issue. Okay, for you Dalton Risner fans, if they take Graham Barton in the first round, you can forget about it because a guy like Dalton Risner is going to require a promise, a starting promise to sign with you. So I'm certain that they probably have it on the back burner for one more guard, one more guy that they're going to add. Who that guy is, you could probably guess, but one guy fired his agent and hired Drew Rosenhaus. So that tells you pretty much everything you need to know, right?
That's
So
pretty good guess.
So 21 comes around, and I think that's the only place because, I love Christian Haynes. He's one of my, in fact, once you get past the obvious, because I love Troy Fontenot, but once you get past the obvious, man, Christian Haynes is my favorite prospect, my favorite offensive line prospect in this draft. I think he starts at right guard, and that's still a situation where they place a call to Dalton Risner, and he starts at left guard.
Yeah, we have a guy, Mason Johnstone, that writes some articles on draft prospects. He's in our Discord group, and he wrote an article and has commented a few times that he actually sees Christian Haynes as a guy that there's always one or two guys in the last couple of picks of the first round that surprise people, mostly because teams know they won't be there again at 60 or 62. I could see, and Mason said, so I'll give him all the credit, that Christian Haynes is the guy that he wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the last couple picks of the first round or even the first couple picks of the second round. And he's long gone by the time we get to 55.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, I did a thing on one of my shows, on my OnlyFans Q&A live show, which is a show that I do live on my Discord, on our Discord, OnlyFans. I did a show where I asked, what is the wild, reach you could see at 21 that you wouldn't be mad at? And mine was Christian Haynes. Like, if they completely lost their mind and just took Christian Haynes at 21, I'd be like, what? And then I'd be like, you know what? He is a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Well, you say what, but you lock in a starter with that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I could see us if we go, I would not be shocked, especially if we can get another pick, if the Dolphins double dip on offensive line, because I think it's that deep. Now, to kind of play off of that as well, Alf, do you think with how the prospects are kind of lining up, do you think the Dolphins are entering that first round, maybe second round, looking for the long-term replacement for Armstead at left tackle as well, and just go, we're going to take our lumps with a rookie left guard, but this is going to be our guy going forward at left tackle?
Yeah, I think that you're beginning to see some of that. And, all you got to do is just follow the Dolphins around. Who goes where? You had Butch Barry visit with Tyler Guyton, work him out in person. You've had eyes on him this offseason. They set up a visit with Jackson Powers Johnson. So definitely an interior offensive lineman is probably in the cards. But so with Tyler Guyton, so is a tackle that could, and I'm not saying that he will, but could play inside this season. I worry a little bit because Tyler Guyton is 6'8". I'm not fond of tall guards. They usually don't work out. Our quarterback is 6'1", so that's part of the consideration. Okay, but there is one guy like if we get absolutely lucky and Troy Fontenot drops to you at 21, I don't know how that is not the pick because he starts at left guard tomorrow. Okay, and he is, for a fact, you're starting left tackle in 2025. So, yeah, that's a possibility. There's a few guys that fit in that mold. Kingsley Somata, I always have a problem pronouncing his name, is also in that mold. I believe he can start at guard, and I believe he's the starting left tackle a year from now. So there are a few guys, and there's some guys. Look. I like Jordan Morgan. A lot of guys don't. But, do I feel good about taking him at 21? Probably not. But if they trade down and he's the pick in the 30s, I could see him as a guy that could play at guard and then eventually move out to tackle. So, yeah, there's several guys that you could do that with in this draft.
So you bring up Tyler Guyton, and he's the perfect example of, to me, and it's really two guys. Or three, I guess. Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, and Amarius Mims, who I just don't see being able to play guard on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're in a window like the Dolphins are in, where you're competing for a Super Bowl or hoping to compete for a Super Bowl, I just don't see taking a guy with your first round pick that you don't have an idea or a plan for them to make an impact in year one. I think Cam Smith and Channing Tindall weren't first round picks, so it's a little different. But I think if you're drafting a first round pick, especially Mike McDaniel's first round pick, and Chris Greer, it's an important pick for him. I just can't see them going with a guy that's not going to be an impact guy in year one.
Yeah, I completely agree. No more mulligans with their picks. They need guys that are going to be contributors right away. You win in this league by putting your money on the field. Okay. You also win in this league by getting contributions from your draft picks, and they haven't done that the last couple of years. I happen to be a pretty big Cam Smith believer. I've seen flashes from Channing Tindall, but we kind of have a pretty good idea where that one is heading, right? And it's nowhere good. But
yeah, I've already written off Tindall. I'm at the point now where I'm shocked if he's even on the team come September.
Yeah, but I'm pretty optimistic about Cam Smith. In fact, I'm willing to call that. I think he's going to be a pretty good contributor and a good player for us down the road. But you lose when you have gobs and gobs of money on the bench. And again, I don't believe in having this mulligan thing. They've done it for a couple of drafts, and they felt good about it because, and including one draft, the one in Vegas, the one that I was there for, Chris Greer essentially said our draft pick is playing wide receiver for us, and he wears number 10. And yeah, okay, that's understandable. But going forward, you got to start using some of these picks into guys that are going to contribute right away. And that's why I have some doubts as far as, an edge player at 21, although that might be the BPA. Like, how do you pass on a Latu or Jared Verse? Or
I would throw Chop Robinson in there too.
Yeah, Chop Robinson is a guy that I'm not particularly fond of, but Chris is, and I trust his eye, so he sees something. He's a fabulous athlete. I can tell you that right now. So, if he fails, it's because of something inside and his football IQ. It's not because of his physical skills. While Latu is the opposite. Latu has an immensely high IQ, great tape, but he has issues physically. So, which means that he probably fits in perfectly with the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It feels like we're taking the guys who are. It feels like the Dolphins thing is you either go really safe and you get the people who don't have anything spectacular about them, or you're gambling 100% on tools. And sometimes you get someone who, in year 4, finally shows something in Austin Jackson, or you get a Mahogany. So,
yeah.
Well, we have somebody writing into us right now that they said that reading through the tea leaves of what Greer was talking about today, he used a couple times that Mike McDaniel seemed very excited about the possibility of who we're picking. So McDaniel's excitement might kind of lead to the offensive side and might lead to possibly another playmaker that's going to help this offense, and that would allude to the receiver talk we kind of had earlier.
Don't forget edge. Remember what one of the few quotes that you can look it up that Mike McDaniel has ever given on the draft is that he said his favorite position group was edge players, and that he would take one in every single draft. He said that. So who knows if there's a guy that he has all picked out. And
outside of the top 3 edges, I once you get into the second and third round, I would actually say my favorite edge is probably Muhammad Kamara, who I think is more of a day 3 guy. But
yeah, that's my guy. But I think you're going to need a 4th round pick to take him.
Yeah,
and he's not the prototypical guy. He's shorter, and he's short and squat, which is probably not, a fit for this system. But I would take him. I think he's a fabulous player. But I don't think Miami has a shot at him. I think you need a 4th-round pick to be able to take him.
Yeah, no, I agree there. He's one, especially with how the combine went. I was like, this is one of those picks where the collusion or whatever, the getting our picks taken really hurts us. The other thing I still think is on the table, especially in day 2, and Jordan knows I love this. I actually like this from top to bottom, this tight end class a lot more than I did last year's class. And there are some guys day 2 that I look at and I'm like, I would love to see them in this offense. Cade Stover is one of my guys. I know Jordan loves Ben Sinote. So I was curious if you think tight end, even with getting Jonnu Smith, if we could still do that early in day 2.
They visited with JT Sanders. They've worked them out. They had the full contingent there in Texas to look at all those prospects. JT Sanders has a fabulous statistical profile for this offense. I like a guy day 3 in Dallin Holker from Colorado
Another
State.
guy I love too.
Brett loves Holker.
I've been telling him about Holker for weeks.
I like him day 3, and I think you could stay put, play around with your picks. Make sure you have a 5th-round pick, because I think that's probably where he's going to go. But day 2, man, I think Theo Johnson has that look as well. And he checks a lot of boxes. He really does. So I tend to agree with you. This is a pretty good tight end class. I don't think it's a giant need, unless you get lucky and you grab an extra pick and then you're staring at JT Sanders and you have him well scouted. You have a lot of information on him and you know what you're going to do with him. Mm-hmm. Then, I would move on a tight end day 2. If not, I think you could wait to day 3 if you're staying put and you're not adding a lot of picks.
Yeah, Sanders is a guy like early on in the process, early on in the season, really. Jordan and I were both like, don't be shocked if he sneaks into the conversation at 21. Unfortunately, with how the combine's gone, and then as our producer likes to point out, the one viral video of him trying to block the sled has gone. I think he's seen his value really fall a lot.
Yeah,
which is sad because he's another guy that I really like as a player, and I think that's someone who screams Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, same thing with Jaheim Bell of FSU. Yeah. Everybody doesn't like, they don't like the size profile. Quite frankly, he's small for a tight end, for any kind of tight end, really, in the NFL today. But you turn on the tape, you look at his advanced metrics, and they all check out. Like, that's a guy that can play. That's another day 3 guy. And I'm privy to some of the grades that teams have given to some of these guys. And I'm actually shocked that Jaheim Bell has like a 5th, 6th round grade, because this is a guy very early on in the draft process that everybody was talking about in the 2nd round. Yeah. So
it's funny you mentioned Jaheim Bell, and you mentioned he's small, but the one play that stands out for me is where he just runs over the dude in LSU to end that game and cap off that game. He's a physical guy, even though he's on the smaller side.
Absolutely. And that happens with several guys in this class. Last night we were talking offensive linemen, and the last question we had on offensive linemen was, is there a guy, that you would take in that 6th, 7th round that you would expect to probably make the team and, contribute for you? And I kind of like Drake Nugent of Michigan. The problem is that every time that they measure him, he gets smaller and smaller. And they're going to measure them at rookie camp and then at training camp. So by the time the season moves around, he's going to be like 5'9", 160 pounds, But he's a guy that can play. The only thing is, you look at his size and, standing at under 6'2" and under 295 pounds, he's a center. You wonder, man, they line up a big 0 on him or a big 1 shade. How is he going to hold up against those guys? And you put on the tape and you're like, oh, yeah, this guy can play football. And same thing goes for Matt Lee of the U, who I absolutely love. And he's another guy that makes a case for needing more picks, because I think the rest of the league is going to see what I and others have seen on tape and saw from him playing at the U this year, Matt Lee is an NFL center. He is.
Oh, Alf, you're talking to UCF Knight right here. I saw a lot of Matt Lee. I love Matt Lee. And I think that one of the biggest downgrades UCF had from the year prior to this past year was their center place simply because Matt Lee wasn't there. So I have no doubt in my mind he's going to be whoever drafts him on day 3 is getting a guy that can come in, start, and be one of those late round gems. I'm huge. I'm very, very high on Matt Lee.
Absolutely. I don't find many. The only thing wrong with him is, he doesn't have ideal size, but it's fine. They'll get him on a strength program. He'll be fine by training camp. You have the functional strength. He's a good football player. Like, it's on the film. Like, you watch it on film and he's fine. Like, he's an NFL center. Is he going to play for the next 15 years? I don't know. Can he make a roster? I tend to believe yes. He'll make a roster in the NFL. And again, he's another excuse why I think trading down is the heavy favorite from 21, because I think you could turn that into Matt Lee, because you could get a fourth. Like, who knows? Maybe you move down 10 spots, you gain a 1, a 2, or a 2, a 3, and a 4 for your 1. And one of those picks could be Matt Lee.
Yeah. And speaking of centers, I know you mentioned him earlier, Alpha, but Jackson Powers Johnson's been kind of a polarizing figure in Dolphins Twitter. I know going back to mobile, during the Senior Bowl week, he was the guy everybody wanted. And partly because of injuries, partly because people like Graham Barton have just gone insane. It feels like he's the forgotten man. And I saw, I believe it was Dolphins Talk, tweeted this out earlier today. And it's not a tweet I really agree with, but they said that JPJ is what Darnell Washington was to the Dolphin fan base last year, where the fans want someone that no other team wants. And I don't agree with that. I think it's more or less a case, and I'm curious of your opinion, is despite how important center play is, it just always gets pushed down. And the same with guards, really. We saw Rob Hunt get money I would not even couldn't even fathom he would have gotten. But when it comes to, like, unless you're a tackle, you tend to always get pushed down in the draft.
Yeah, I agree. JPJ, first of all, he's a Dolphin fan, so how cool is that? Okay. He is one of that handful of group. There's about 4 or 5 guys that I look at and I say, yeah, that guy starts on the offensive line this season. He's the starting right guard. They draft him. He's the starting right guard. And will he eventually be the starting center? I have my doubts. Remember, he doesn't have a lot of experience as a center. It's 1 season starting. And he did have some snapping issues. So, Dolphin fans are going to feel right at home when they watch him snap the ball in training camp. Okay. But does he start at guard? Absolutely. Is he a long-term answer at guard? Damn right he is. I happen to think that Aaron Brewer is going to be a hit at center. Man, you take JPJ and you play him at right guard, I think you're really doing things, because I did a checklist on what the offense needed, and they pretty much have everything checked off except a guard that you can call leads behind, and that third wide receiver. I think it's still an issue. You can fix both in the draft. The offer to Odell Beckham is still out there. They're still talking. It's not over. My guess is that Odell Beckham is waiting for June 2nd, and that's why he hasn't signed yet. He's waiting for us to be a little bit more flush with cash. But JPJ is a guy that, let's face it, you've gotten lucky. He has hip issues. He's had some knee issues, some ankle issues, and concussion issues. Now, that doesn't sound all that great, but that's helped him get out of the first round and put you within striking distance at 55. If he's at 55, he's on that short list of BPAs, and he wouldn't surprise me the least bit. And I would welcome that pick. Yeah, I think he's a really good player. His film is probably, for the interior offensive lineman, is only rivaled by Graham Barton's. And remember, Graham Barton only played guard a few snaps as a freshman. He played left tackle, although he did play covered. They did play an offensive lineman outside of him, so you could kind of project. But of the pure guards, maybe Christian Haynes is the only one with better tape. But I like JPJ a lot.
Alf, if you could come out of the draft with your dream guy, so you could pick one guy, and it's got to be realistic. It can't be Caleb Williams or Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison. But if you could pick one guy that you say, all right, the only thing I can guarantee about the draft is that the Dolphins come out with this guy, who would that guy be?
Xavier Legette. I think he's a do-over for many teams on DK Metcalf. He does some things better than DK Metcalf. Not now, okay, because DK Metcalf is a star in the NFL. That still matters. But I'm talking about as prospects coming out. Xavier Legette loves to block. That's a huge check mark in this offense. He extends his stride when catching the ball, catches the ball cleanly. He can play outside and inside. He's not just a brute. He could run by you. He has 4.3 speed, and the size is undeniable. He checks so many boxes, and I think he's one of the few, and maybe the only one that you could probably get in the second round where I forget about my Odell Beckham thing. And I'd say, you know what? Maybe use that money on a guard or something else. And now Odell Beckham is no longer that needed because I think we found our wide receiver 3. And down the road, if Tyreek Hill is not going to be here, I think you have, Jalen Waddle's running partner. So Xavier Legette is a guy I absolutely love. I have no problem with him as a prospect. I think he's pretty clean.
To go the opposite way of prospects who everybody seems to be hyping up, who's the one person, again, realistic to Dolphins, that maybe you wouldn't touch, but someone that just gives you an uneasy feeling that you just don't feel comfortable endorsing?
Patrick Paul, and that's easy.
Oh, thank you.
I understand. Look, and I get it fed to me all the time. Oh, this guy gave up 1 sack in 18 years. Okay, that's great. Okay, that's nice. Watch the tape. That's not what I would call consistent technique, or to call him raw is an understatement. You want to mold somebody like that who's exclusively a tackle, man, and you're gonna use a high pick for him because he's going to go in that second round. Somebody's going to look at the measurables and take him. Man, he makes me uneasy. He just does. And, I like so many more tackles ahead of Patrick Paul. Like, he's the guy that does scare me. Like, he scares me.
Yeah. You say the film looks raw. Who had worse film, him or Austin Jackson back at USC? Because I remember Chris, CK, for your co-host back then, was like, you can tell that Austin Jackson, some long lines, you could tell he didn't know what he was doing on the field, but the talent was there.
Yeah, well, we all eviscerated the pick at the time, and I remember my line was, if this guy's supposed to be good, why doesn't he play good?
Yeah.
At some point, like they're saying, this guy's going to be a 15th overall. He's right there smack dab in the first round. This guy can play. I'm like, really? Okay, why doesn't he play good?
Yeah.
I didn't like Austin Jackson. I hated that pick when it happened.
Yeah.
I was elated by the season he had last year. He wasn't clean. I like to point out, look, he didn't have many pass pro sets. He's fabulous in the run game. I'll tell you that right now. He is absolutely fabulous in the run game. He could hook people. He's not going to drive people out, okay? But he could kick people out. He could move to the second level. He could hook people. He could wall inside. He could reach outside to 6, 7, even 9 techs. He's a fabulous run blocker. He's good for what they want him to do. But as I point out, he was only asked to be in a true pass pro set 6 times against New England in that week 2 game. And he faced Matthew Judon 6 times. He gave up 4 pressures and a sack. Okay. So to say that the jury's still out on him as, let's say, a Pro Bowl performer, that's saying the least. But is he a good right tackle by NFL standards? Yes. And, I think they got lucky. They found something he can do and do well. And I support that that contract. It's a big number, but if you look at it, man, they could get out of it in a year. If everything goes tits up on him, they could get out of it in a year. He's worked out, but yeah, if you ask me who's worse, I think Patrick Paul's worse because Austin Jackson, you could just see the physical tools were going to be overwhelming for somebody, and they were just going to have to take him. And his age was a huge deal. He's still young, But Patrick Paul, not for me, man.
Yeah, no. And speaking of players that got extensions, I think everybody feels pretty confident that Tua's extension is going to get done fairly soon. I think even Tua's kind of alluded to that he thinks it's going to be done relatively soon as well. Do you think that gets done before OTAs? And also something I always ask Jordan and I put on the podcast, why does it seem like everybody in the media, whether it is local or national, why do they all seem to hate Tua so much out of nowhere?
I'll take the second part. I think people have a real problem with admitting that they were wrong. I think
you're not talking about Tua. You're talking about everything.
No, pretty much everything. Okay. I went back and forth. I changed my opinion a couple of times. I originally liked Justin Herbert better. I watched Tua more, and I ended up supporting Tua as the draft pick. I wanted Tua. They took Tua. I saw Justin Herbert play, and I said, okay, we screwed up. We made a mistake. Okay. Then I was privy to what was going on behind the scenes, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give Tua a second chance here. I want to see what he looks like with proper support, with a coach that knows what he's doing, and a coach that actually wants him to be the quarterback. I saw it. 6th ranked offense. Then I saw it again. 1st ranked offense. While the other guy, Justin Herbert, has regressed. By all accounts, he's regressed the last 2 years. I changed my mind back. So now I like Tua best. I think they got drafted correctly. Okay. I think Joe Burrow's the best in that class. Tua's the 2nd best in that class. Herbert's 3rd, and Jordan Love is 4th. And yes, Jalen Hurts is 5th. Like, that's the way I see it. I think they were drafted correctly, and that's the way it is. And what was the first part of the question?
Do you think the extension gets done before OTAs?
Well, today Chris Greer said, "Look, we're gonna focus on the draft," and that makes sense because they got to get all their ducks in a row as far as what positions they need to spend money on and which ones they don't. Remember, they're getting money on June 2nd. They're getting that Xavier Howard money on June 2nd. That's going to put them back into contention to maybe rework the numbers for Odell Beckham if they need him. Maybe a Dalton Risner. And who knows, maybe somebody else. But I think that it was instructive that he said, look, we're going to get past the draft, and then, we're going to talk again. Everything's going well. He keeps saying that. So I think it probably gets done before training camp. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if we're a day before training camp, and then there's all this speculation in the national media, like, whoa, is he going to show up because he doesn't have a contract yet? And then, boom, there's the announcement one day before camp. Like, that wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. So I expect it to get done. I thought it would get done before the draft. Evidently, they're pushing it off to after. So, yeah, it'll get done.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't get done, despite, and our producer wants us to put, because I know big reason you and him connected was you asked for a list of Tua haters, which is where our podcast originally came from. And we did want to give you a chance. Was there anybody you wanted to add to the list in the last, for people who have said dumb shit about the Dolphins, dumb shit about Tua? Anybody you want to add? Because there have been quite a few that have come out in the last month or so as well.
Joel Klatt needs to, like, he wants to run the group at this point. He should run for class president of the group. There's just no way you're gonna do 4, and it's 4 mock drafts. Okay, at this point, he's trolling. He's insisting upon himself. Okay, 4 mock drafts, and in all 4 mock drafts, you mock Michael Penix Jr. to Miami. Come on, man. You already got your attention by mocking him the first time. You mocked him the first time. Okay, you mocked him to Miami the first time. Michael Penix Jr. at 21. Great. The second time, come out and say, you know what? But I realized that they're going to keep Tua, so I'm going to mock this guy over there, But no, he's like, no, I'm going to do 4 mock drafts, and in all of them, I'm going to put Michael Penix Jr. to Miami. Why? Because evidently I'm an asshole. Like, why? Like, what are you doing? So, congratulations, Joe Klatt. You're like you run this group for the year.
Yeah. Another person we wanted to put on as well. I don't know how much you've seen of him, Alf, is Nick Wright. Now, I love when Nick Wright because he just trolls Buffalo and New England fans so much, and it's entertaining. But he's another guy who basically all off season has just flat out been going, just let Tua walk. You can do better than him. I think at the same time Klatt did, he said, "Oh yeah, you can go get Penix. Go get Penix. He's better. He's healthier. He's younger," which I think he's only a year or two younger than Tua. But I think he's backed off on that a little bit. But he still keeps saying, "Don't extend Tua. Let him walk." And even if you want to stay behind the injury issues, which is really just a concussion, in my opinion, you don't just let a guy in his mid-20s walk. You find a way to make that work. I think it's going to end up being, I forget who tweeted, said, "Oh, the Dolphins don't want to give more than $50 million," but he's going to be a $50 million a year quarterback.
Yeah. And remember, it's Florida. It's the state of Florida. We have a very, very favorable tax system. So $50 million is worth more than the 53 or 54 that Justin Herbert's getting in California. So always keep that in mind. But Nick Wright, I will say this about Nick Wright. If you're going to be a Tua hater, you better be consistent. Hate forever. Hate from the beginning to the end. Skip Bayless absolutely despises Tua. I respect that. He's gonna go down with the ship. Okay? But I posted a screenshot. That little Mahomes mountain that he does.
Yeah.
He had Tua number 2 on that mountain behind Patrick Mahomes during mid-season this season. So that tells you all you need to know about Nick Wright. He's one of these. He's an entertainer. He's not an analyst.
Yeah. He's also a very big, like you said, Kansas City homer, to the point where it's like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
But
and I even heard him say, "Oh, Miami's scary if you get them in the playoffs for Kansas City," and he can't be like I said, he's a entertainer. He's not an analyst. Yep. And if you're gonna be a Tua hater, be one all the time. Don't be wishy-washy.
Yep.
Because then I know that you're just you're engagement farming. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Alf, I promise when we get to the season, because we put people on the list every week, I'm going to start reaching out to you and see if you have anybody that you want to put on the list.
Yeah.
And you can feel free to come on here, roast them all you want, trash them all you want, and throw them. We'll make the images and put them. We'll make a new list starring you and your 3 yards per carry official to a hater list.
Cal Brandt, man, I think he's coming on strong. Like that's a guy to watch. He's my dark horse for Tua hater MVP.
Kurt Bankert of that quarterback who used to be Aaron Rodgers' backup is starting to do that too. He's trying to get the Twitter interaction just by hating on Tua and saying not extend. And then you have Chris Perkins coming out writing an article this week saying you can't extend Tua, to the point that even Travis Winfield blasts him on his podcast this week. And Travis works for the Dolphins.
Travis actually on his podcast said something about Chris?
He didn't go by name, but the podcast came out after Chris wrote the article saying you can't extend Tua.
So here's the thing about Chris Perkins. I like Chris Perkins. I know him personally. He wrote, and this is what I don't get, okay? He wrote an article toward the end of the season where he called this team an underachieving team, right? Mm-hmm. But I can remember when everybody was making their predictions, and he wrote that they would go 9-8.
Yeah.
So how can it be an underachieving team if they won 2 more games than he predicted? Right?
Moving the needles.
How does that make any sense? Now, if I get on, like, look, they underachieved by my standard, because I predicted 11-6 and division champions, right? And my prediction was pretty specific. I said the last game, and I made this prediction on our podcast and on Rock Pile Report, which is a Buffalo Bills podcast. I said Miami will be playing for the division title the last game of the season against Buffalo and will win the division at 11-6. So obviously I thought that there would be 10-6 going into the game instead of being 11-5 going into the game. So they fell short because they lost that game. They didn't win the division, but they won 11 games.
Can you do me a favor and just predict that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah. Look, it's not crazy, but we don't do that prediction. We don't do that show until the week before the season.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised if I make some type of weird prediction like that. And oddly enough, I nailed who they were going to lose in the playoffs to, because I predicted last year. My prediction was that they were losing the AFC Championship game to Kansas City. In Kansas City. So, but
yeah,
they lost 2 rounds too early.
That game still rubs me the wrong way because I've never seen a Mike McDaniel team. Yes, I know there was injuries, but I've never seen a team look so unprepared offensively under him. And like
they look cold, and they look like they didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I was stunned, and of course, because when the game was, alcohol was involved too, and that was not a pretty after game for me.
Yeah, I was. It's funny because I'm at my apartment and I'm watching the game, and I'm hyped all day. I'm ready to go, and it was the very first drive. There were 2 plays. The very first third down of the game, we stopped them on first and second down, and then they just drop back, throw it over the middle to Kelsey. First down, they move forward like it was nothing. And then it was a play later in the first drive where I think it was Duke Riley just got absolutely annihilated on a Pacheco run. And the camera zoomed in on Duke Riley's face, and just the look on his face after getting run over, I was like, all right, it's going to be one of those nights.
Yeah, no, I knew we were in trouble on that third down conversion on that first drive, the third play of the game. I knew we were in trouble then, because I looked at Patrick Mahomes and I'm like, oh, it's one of these games.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I knew we were in trouble when Ethan Bonner came into the game. No disrespect to Ethan Bonner.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes just had that look on his face like, I'll get us enough offense and I'll win this game by myself if I have to. And I was like, okay, we're in trouble.
Do you think that Tua has the ability to turn into that type of guy that they go to and you just see the look on his face? And for lack of a better term that I know, at least, you're fucked if he has that look on his face?
Yeah, and the thing is that we've seen it, We've seen, like, you could see games where he's been pumped. Like, he's pumped up, where you might even say, you know what, slow down a bit, calm down because you're way too pumped up. I remember the Buffalo game, week 3, was it? Week 3, 2022. He was pumped to the gills in that game. You could tell he was fired up. He was throwing the ball much, much harder. He was sky high last year for that opening. If you don't think that guy listened to a bunch of crap about Justin Herbert all off season and wasn't ready to play that first game of the season against him, then you don't probably know him. Okay. Yeah. You could tell he was pumped. Even in a game where they absolutely got killed against the Ravens, I suggest go watch that game again. Okay. Because there's like 5 minutes left and they're only down 4. And he throws an absolute dime on 4th and 5 to Tyreek Hill. I know which one you know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Watch that game and just watch the first half. He's playing great in that first half.
I agree.
And then the points start piling on. He's down 1 million points, and you can see he's like, oh boy. And then he starts pressing, and then he starts playing bad.
Yeah. I think the Baltimore game was also the moment where I was patient all year with Fangio, but Baltimore was definitely one where I'm like, he's too stubborn. Like, we need to change something.
The Tennessee game just
was bad. No.
Yeah, that one was a jumping point. Jordan was at that game, Alf. So
yeah, I've been going to Dolphin games with my family for 25 years. I go to every game. Even when I lived in Orlando, I drove down for every game. I have never walked back to my car after a game and just stood outside my car looking around. I remember one of my buddies that I tailgate with, he came back and like walked up, and next thing I know, there were just like groups of people like crying and hugging around me. And it felt like our season ended that night.
You saw Hard Knocks? Did you see Hard Knocks?
I couldn't watch it. I couldn't get myself to watch that episode.
Okay, the Hard Knocks of that episode, there's a scene where Mike McDaniel is in his office at 4 a.m. My theory is he didn't go home.
I was up at 4 a.m. thinking about it. I bet he better.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you've seen where their practice facility is.
Yeah.
Like you can walk from the practice facility to the stadium. You know what I mean?
It's a beautiful facility.
You know, so I'm pretty sure that he just gets his car from the facility and just crosses the street and walks in, right? So I think that he left that game and he says, he called his wife and he said, I ain't coming home. I'm going right to my office because But I had a friend of mine here, and when that game ended, he looked at me and he was like, I can't believe we lost this game. And I looked at him and go, this feels like it means something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look what happened. Sure enough.
Yeah. That was
they could have been playing that last game against Buffalo for seeding, and they could have rested everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
said, you know what?
Game.
Yeah, and they would have won the division already. They would have won the division against Dallas, right? But they could have been in that Buffalo game saying, you know what, we're happy with I don't know if Kansas City could have overtaken them. Yeah. I'm trying to think. No, they couldn't have, because who was second? Who was the 2 seed? The 2 seed was Buffalo, right? And they did it with 11 wins. So no, Kansas City would have not overtaken them. They would have had the 2 seed locked up. Okay, so Kansas City would have lost the 2 seed as soon as they lost to the Raiders. So yeah, they could have sat everybody against Buffalo and just said, we're fine with the 2 seed. We're not even going to try for the 1 seed, and that's it. You know, we're just sitting around. You know, Buffalo also might have been out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, man, that game, that was the one that I looked at Fangio and I'm like, how does this happen, man? Yeah. Good defenses don't give up 2 touchdown leads with 5 minutes to go, you know? And actually it was like 4 minutes to go.
Yeah. When we did our podcast, I said to Jordan, I was like, I think they took their foot off the gas, and Jordan, I think, agreed with me, but people in our Discord were like, no, there's no way they took their foot off the gas. And then Fangio and players came out and were like, yeah, we took our foot off the gas, both in play calling and play. And I'm just like you said, that's a good point, saying, yeah, that's where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of questions about Fangio. But also that was the first game I really thought McDaniel was calling plays for stats. And like we got it. How many times did we get inside the 5 and we just kept passing, doing fades? And in my head, I'm like, they're going to keep Tua's streak going. Was there any time, or do you think that at times, at least towards the end of the season, the team got too worried about getting Tyreek the 2K or keeping Tua's touchdown streak going along and kind of lost the plot, so to speak, and weren't really calling plays how they normally would?
Yeah, I don't like all that statistical talk, you know. Not that I'm really old school, because sometimes a team can rally around something like that, you know, because it does lead to winning, you know. But once it becomes, you know, like look, if Tyreek is way ahead of pace, okay, he only needs like 80 or 90 yards a game to get there, that's fine. But when there's 4 games left, you could tell he needs about 160, 170 yards a game to get the all-time record. Yeah, stop talking about it. You're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. Okay? And if you push for it, you're probably hurting the team. So, yeah, I'm not for that, you know. And I understand calling plays, you know, for stats, because I've seen other coaches do it. Sean Payton was infamous for that, okay, in New Orleans. But man, that Tennessee game, man.
You know. Yeah. And well, Alf, before we let you go, we do appreciate you being with us for about an hour, and this has flown by. Do you and the 3 Yards Per Carry crew have anything special going on as we're closing in on the draft?
Well, no, you know, we're doing our draft series. We're finishing up that draft series. We should finish it up this week, and we'll probably do a mock draft next year. Next week. But yeah, we don't have anything going on besides that, which we do every single year. And of course, you could catch us on our Discord. It's discord.gg/onlyfins, and you can become a member there for $3 a month.
Excellent. And we'll let you know, Alf, if you want to join us next week. We are planning to do a live stream of the draft, and we're going to try and have people from every team, because we did do a composite mock draft with content creators from every fan base 2 weeks ago, which went really well. So we're going to try and do something similar with that for the draft as well. So you're welcome to join for that as well. Jordan, we have got a couple other things on the slate in the next week too, don't we?
Yeah, we have a busy next 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. The draft season is always my favorite season. Growing up a Dolphin fan, this is the one time a year that I felt like we could win something.
Yep.
So I love this time of year, and I celebrate it more probably than I celebrate the holidays in December.
Yep. And we will be interviewing the people behind Draft Diamonds on Thursday, who are also the senior scouts for the Aloha Bowl as well.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Well, Alf, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Go Dolphins. Continue the great work that you do.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.